welcome everyone. This is our sixth meetup, and it is December 15th, 2021, and it's expanding your consciousness through sharing stories and also through discussion as well. Last week we talked about pets and our connection with pets, and then we got into other discussions, the relationship that humans and pets have, and also we got into discussions about consciousness overall. And so I thought, let's continue our discussion about consciousness. But I also want to remind people as we go through these discussions, and especially if people are sharing unusual stories, that please keep your mind open, because that's the whole purpose of this, right? We're in the field of all possibilities and anything is possible. So, so I wanted to, actually, Shima, you and I were talking a bit about your teacher, and his name is Muhammad Ali Tahiri?
Tahiri, yeah.
Yes, and could you just kind of tell us a bit about the type of teachings you receive and how it has impacted you, how it's helped you expand your understanding of consciousness?
Sure. I think I mentioned a little bit last week that, so do you want to know about my story, like how I got to know him?
Yes.
So yeah, basically, when I was in Iran, I was told by many of my friends, hey, let's go to his classes. This is like a very different kind of spiritual teacher. And I wasn't really open to it. I guess at the time I wasn't just ready. And when I came here in Canada, I think there was a point in my life that I was just thinking about more about universe and about just us as human beings, and like what are we doing in this universe and what is our role as human beings. So these were like questions that were really like filled my mind at the time, and I was just searching on internet and different teachers and just the school of thought that has been so far. And then one night or like one day, his name came to my mind just out of nowhere. And this was like years after, like maybe 4 or 5 years after. And then I'm like, oh, I'm gonna search him. And then I searched him and I found his classes like online, and then I started listening to them. And it just clicked with me, like from the very beginning. It was just like, this is it. This is like all I was looking for. And his teaching are not just theoretical, which is like a lot of part. It's like he talks about the nature of human being, the nature of the universe, and like our life and a lot more, but it's also practical, where he gives us links, which we call halqa in Farsi. And these links helps us to get connected with the higher consciousness. And we, as part of that consciousness, we only can get awareness when we get connected to the higher consciousness. And so that's how I really got to know the whole idea of halqa mysticism or interuniversalism, as we call it.
Do you do like meditations, contemplations, or?
It's basically, so first we talk about the nature of consciousness and the consciousness. So if you think about this word as like the building block for this word is atoms. And then you think about atoms, like what atom is nucleus and is electrons that are moving. So the whole like volume that we see around atoms is basically a virtual volume, because it's made of the electrons moving, like that electron cloud. It makes that volume. So for example, my body, if the electrons stop moving, all remains from it is a bunch of nucleus. So in a way that I don't exist, you don't exist. This is like the whole universe. In a way, it's virtual. It doesn't exist. And then we think, okay, so if this is all virtual and this is all just a movement, how is it that I become me and then you become you, and then this is like our laptop, and like, you know, everything is the way they are. And that's where consciousness comes, because then we think, okay, so there should be an intelligence, our intelligence, that gives directions to these movements. So make it like purposeful, or make it what they are. So that's what consciousness is. So then we become aware that everything in this universe is consciousness. And then, so from then, sorry, what was your question?
Well, I just want to know what type of practice, like, do you have a daily practice? Is that what it
Okay,
is?
and yes, okay. And so, and then, so with getting connected with this consciousness that we can do various things. So this consciousness, just like anything else in this universe, it also comes in two forms: positive consciousness and negative consciousness. And this is also something that has been like told by like all kinds of school of thoughts, that yin, yang, evil, like good, evil. So positive consciousness and negative consciousness. And we can either get at any moment, naturally, we are either connected with the positive consciousness or negative consciousness. And with negative consciousness, that's where we get to power mysticism, where you can, for example, read future, or you can just read minds or have influence on other people. And with positive consciousness, that's what we do, is you get aware of yourself and you get to know yourself. And that's the whole role of human being, to get to know themselves in this basically journey of life. So when we come to this world, we don't know nothing about ourselves, but when we leave it, we want to know like who we are and why we came here. And that's the whole purpose of us being on this planet.
So does he say we're like, does he get into reincarnation? Does he get into the fact that we are eternal beings? Like, is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's another thing, not reincarnation, because I guess what reincarnation says is that we go and then we come back to this world in different forms. And so we don't believe in that for different reasons. But what we believe is that the circle of lives, where we're going through different lives, and then each life is different form from other life. For example, this life is a physical life, where we have whatever we have in our, like we have our physical body. But that's when we die, we leave this physical body, and our mind, or what we call mental body, moves on to the next life. And so yes, we are eternal being, but not in the physical form. So yes, we're gonna leave our physical body behind, and then we're gonna move on to the next life. And each life, we're gonna kind of carry our insights from that life to the next life. And that's why when a baby comes to this world, like just in general, babies, they are all different from each other. So that's not the starting point. And that shows that this is not the starting point, because otherwise all babies should be the same, but that's not
They're
the
not
case.
empty slates.
Yes, exactly. So they have personalities, and they brought these personalities with them from their other lives, right? So you see, like, there's a baby who's just more calm, and you see a baby who's just more jealous. So we have all these personalities that we bring with ourselves to this world, and from this world to other worlds. So basically, and then part of his teachings is his awareness from the consciousness, from the his connections. And then the other part is where you get connected directly, because that's basically what we want, is just your direct connection with the consciousness, and then your direct awareness. Because like saying this stuff is one thing, but then getting just really to know it by your heart is another.
That's what I was just going to ask you. Does he talk about the heart and the connection?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's
yeah.
Okay. Any comments? Anything that people would like to contribute to that?
Yeah, the heart connection to greater awareness of a higher consciousness. That's something that so many mystics talk about. So it rings true of many different people who have taught or, brought this, this information to humanity. So I think that rings true as, to things I've learned and experienced. And I think, yeah, the heart connection I think that's where it's held in us, in that we are able to experience. And it brings it into ourselves, our self-awareness, which you talked about. That's our purpose of life, to know ourselves. And doing so, yeah, we're connecting with this higher consciousness. So I think that that's the important message, is that you're connecting with your heart and staying true to that and experiencing that and letting that be your guide. And I think that's very important to our understanding of that high level of consciousness, that and again, that's our eternal consciousness, the essence of who we are throughout these different lives. And like you said, that we're bringing that I don't know, personality or essence along with it. When this body dies, we're eternal, and that moves. Whatever we've learned through this, we're taking with us, and can inform our personality, and certainly with our self-awareness, where if you're mindful and you're really watching how you react or how things affect you through experience, that you're getting to know yourself. If you're able to reflect in the moment and just say, okay, what's going on with me? Why am I reacting in this way? Why, what is that? What may that be connected to? How do I want to be? So yeah, that's our evolution through our higher consciousness. And our consciousness there's so many different levels to it, right? There's our ordinary awareness of this consciousness of this 5 sense reality, but where we have intuition and we have experiences, which is what a lot of our stories are about, that gives us clues that there's much more going on, that we're connected and we're larger than this, what we just see in this realm, this 5 sense reality. We keep getting clues that there's a lot more going on.
That's what they are, right? They're little hints.
And then, if we pay attention to them and we continue to develop that, then, we get to know ourselves more. Like you said, Shima, this is the purpose of that. So this rings very true to a lot of stuff I've learned in my understanding of consciousness and connecting with our higher consciousness.
Yeah, and also it's just like you started to begin a life, to like live a life that is just more aware, and then you understand that you are a driver of this existence that you have. So you just take more accountability, more responsibility for your actions, your thoughts, your anything, because you understand that how it matters, even like what it goes through your mind, the reflection goes to the universe and then comes back not to you but to the whole universe. So that just like makes you a more responsible person. And the other thing I guess I like to mention is just the way we see life is like an ocean. It's just like when you go to the ocean with a boat, like anything can happen. Like there's going to be a strong winds and waves, and they can just turn your boat upside down. So then you want to build up this existence that is like an ocean liner that doesn't really, so whatever happens in the like life, it just doesn't affect you as badly, because we're going to go through some hard stuff in life. We're going to lose friends, we're going to lose loved ones, we're going to have some failures, right? So that's why a lot of people get, when we don't understand this, when we don't really know ourselves, when we don't really build ourselves up, then we might get depressed, we might just get really devastated. But then knowing this stuff and knowing yourself better, it's just going to help you to like get less affected by all that.
Your ship's going to sail smoothly.
Yes, yes.
It won't sink, and you won't need a life raft.
Yeah, that's yeah, exactly. That's what it is.
Well, and isn't that about like we're all raising our vibration, and people talk about that, and when you take that time to be aware of yourself, you're listening. And you know, some of the videos I think of Listen to Hear from Lady, you're tuning into what you need to hear from the universe, like you said, your heart consciousness, but you have your consciousness from your head to your heart to your hand, so you can even write it and capture what you're receiving. And as Shima says consciousness and Lady says vast, and Diane was in insights for a month, you know, we're getting insights as what she says vast, and it doesn't care, it doesn't have feeling, it's just there. And I like the boat analogy, because for us, like what I've learned, it's all movement, vibration, and energetics, and it's just magical and, you know, colorful. And as you raise and you're aware, you're just there, and we're all connected. Those thoughts are powerful, and you realize that. And I think Diane can expand even a little further from her experience a little bit with it too. And you've known her for 20 years, so.
Yeah, I just, it's interesting you use the analogy of like a ship, right, or boat. Because I happened to be watching Jasmine Heen last night, who's a spiritual teacher in Australia, actually. And that's an old video that I found of hers, though. I mean, she has a lot of newer stuff, but I really thought this was one of her best interviews done in 2015. But she says, when you're anchored in who you are, you can't be moved from it. And it's true, like you're saying, right? All these things happen around us, but you stay quite centered. And a friend of ours, David, will admit to this, he's a Buddhist, and he does, you know, like he has YouTube videos and all that, but he puts himself in unusual situations where people can get quite upset and angry with him, but he is always centered, right? And, you know, it's a good thing to keep in mind. KJ, did you want to add anything?
Oh, wow. Wow. This is great. Yeah, how I view and interpret everything that you've shared is essentially the truth of who we are is love. So the positive consciousness and negative consciousness is kind of like, I'm used to looking at it as fear, like what's the opposite of love is fear. And that is like this experience of duality here in this world. I feel we depart from source, oneness, to get to experience what in the heck love even is. How are we to understand what love is without understanding what it is not? So getting that kind of contrast and different perspectives on it, and like, look how elaborate it can get. This universe and this world, just this planet in particular, is so intricate and wow, just yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
KJ, continue. I don't want to interrupt.
Sure, I'll just tie it up here. Yeah, so just this, like, you've spoken to that unshakable place where we're unrocked by these things that essentially, sorry, let me gather my thought here. It's this journey of remembrance of love, and coming home to that in ourselves. And we have these things called wounding. And I think that the wounding and the triggers come from the places where we've fallen into forgetfulness of our true nature. And as we remember more and more and more, we come home to that place of unshakable, just embodied love, like Christ consciousness, you might say, or Buddha consciousness.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll wrap it there.
And Kelly, did you want to comment?
I agree definitely with the boat analogy. I've always thought of it like that too. So I think that the more centered you are, the better. I think that there are times though when even the most centered of people can lose that, but it's important to know how to get back to it and to remain centered. Yeah.
Yeah, that word that KJ used, remember, when you get taken away from your center, and or you're through your journey, you are like remembering, like, okay, I remember this, but remember, like bringing the parts of your body, your existence together as, members of your body. You're remembering these things, right, that are from your whole vast history of your existence, and you are bringing them back into your consciousness. That's another way to look at remembering, is bringing your parts back together.
I love that so much. It's like where we fragmented off, like we come back into that whole state of wholeness.
Yeah.
Isn't it kind of like we all have the calm within the chaos? Like you're in the eye of a tornado and everything's calm and everything's crazy. And then I had learned about, I'm not going to get this right, the swirling, I don't know if it's Buddha, but they're dancing and everything, like just moving and circling, but they're just calm, but everything around them is just like moving and going, and it's just really, cool.
The whirling dervishes.
Pardon me?
The whirling dervishes.
Yeah, that's it. Whirling dervishes.
Yeah. But it reminds me of the story, Casey, if you remember with Lady. I don't know if you remember the one about her in the car when she was a teenager. Maybe you weren't in that meeting, but there were 4 of them in the car, and they were riding to school, and the fellow driving got in an accident. And she said it's being spun around and flipped over, and she's held. Something was holding her in place, and she's just watching everything happening around her, right? And I thought, like, that's that calm in the storm, right? She's centered. She was more focused on, what her father would say, right? And so she was, she wasn't focused on the accident. She was focused on, look, I have to get to school, right?
And I think it was a couple weeks ago, or when we talked about, I think I mentioned that teenagers and kids playing with, what is it, the Ouija boards. Yeah. And that, I think when I do remember her talking about that, but I think I went back when she was talking about to that time where I was just had the white light and I was just centered too. And everything else around me was like, people are freaking out. And it was like a group of 20 kids or something when we were like 16. So, but it's true. It's like you're calm in that center of the chaos going around you.
Yeah. Yeah, they're good examples, right? Of when you're really grounded and centered and protected to some degree, right? You're protected. What I'd like to do, I know Casey, because, and Kelly, you're both, on the eastern part of the US and Canada. So I just want to show a recording, about 10 minutes And it's Jasmine Heen in this interview in Romania in 2015. The first part, she's talking about her lifestyle, which is she is one of a growing number of people who live on prana, right? So in fact, that's what they'd say, is even though we consume food, we're actually, what keeps us alive is prana, which is around us. So she discusses that, and she's been living on prana since 1993, right? But later on, she gets into that whole thing of, how we treat one another and the kindness in each other, that sort of thing, which I think is an important thing to really stress. And perhaps if we have time, after that, I can share 2 stories of where I witnessed humanity at its best, and actually involved my niece Kelly here. And so I'd like to share that with you now.
And I know that many people ask you about this technical dimension of eating or not eating, but I know this is not but only a peripheral dimension of your research, starting 22 years ago in 1993. Yes, so breatharianism, living with energy and prana.
We like to call them pranic people. We like to change the words. It's so interesting because when I travel the world, I meet many dynamic, amazing people doing different research. Sometimes working with ancient wisdom and adding a more modern take to it. I was recently in India, and there was a man, Robert Schwartz, from the States, and he was beaming in a video to this big congress we have of spiritual scientists in India each year. And he was talking about pre-birth plan. And I kind of like those words, and it's the agreements we make before we come as consciousness, pure consciousness, into a planetary system to serve, or to explore, or to share gifts and give gifts and receive gifts. And all around the world I meet people who are bringing new words. So the term breatharian has been around since the 70s, but people tend to think that it's someone who just breathes and doesn't take nourishment at all, no fluid, no food. But I like the words, as you saw in the video, pranic people and pranic consciousness, because we eat all the time. And that's one of the things I'm working with this year, is the misconception.
Yes.
Because we get this feedback from people on the web, and they say, it's impossible, a system has to eat or it will die. And they're right.
Of course, a closed system will collapse.
You have to.
Yes.
You have to. But the question now is, are there other sources? Is there another source of energy? And as you said, this has been my field of research, not just for 22 years experientially, but since I was a child. I went to church and I heard the teachings of Jesus, and my mother also forcing me to eat meat, which I never wanted to eat when I was even 2 years old. And she told me that there were all these starving children in the world, and I should be grateful that I have physical food. And I was, but I wasn't, because I didn't want to eat what she was giving me, especially meat. But it made me aware that there are children who aren't being taken care of, and it began a lifelong quest, stimulated by the teachings of Jesus, that is there an energy that we all can access that's free, that can eliminate all hunger, not just physical hunger, but why aren't resources distributed around the world where our children are our number one priority? And that's because we have mental hunger and emotional hunger and spiritual hunger. So for me, my journey's always been, show me the kingdom of heaven within, which were the teachings of the Christ. I and my Father are one. Well, let that be a truth. Show me that. And if you ask, you'll receive. And so I began asking at a very young age, and particularly for a way for people on the planet to be nourished so we can have different priorities.
Yes.
You know, it's nice. I mean, what does the world look like without hungry people? What does that look like? No more greed, no more power games, no more ego games, no more domination, no more taking resources from countries that aren't ours.
What a word, what a beautiful
It's
word.
different.
Yes.
It's a field of potential, and I think, you know, all our work has been exploring additional fields of potential and finding out what are we really capable of. And I think for most of us, yourself, I know, and the other guests you've had on the show, people begin with the self. You know, Socrates said, "Man, know thyself." What does that mean? And then you begin in the, you know, the last few decades of who am I? And now that's changed a little bit to how can I serve? Once you know who am I, how can I serve? How can my presence here be beneficial for humanity?
Yes, we hardly need to understand why we are here, the
Yeah.
goal of our life. Otherwise, we are like a dying leaf in the wind.
Well, you know, you watch humanity, and I've watched a lot, and people struggle to survive. We can do a lot to help that, so it's not a struggle. You know, when we have intelligence and awareness and compassion and kindness and a kind heart, then, and consciousness, we can easily redistribute resources in the world. We can make our children our number one priority. And this goes back to what my mother alerted me to. Why aren't we? Why are there starving children in the world? And I don't want to make that from a, oh, that's a terrible world, because it's a beautiful world point of view, but it is a time of shifting priorities. And I think it helps when we, through our spiritual practice, through the lifestyle we choose, can bring ourselves into a point of just peace. I'm not hungry for anything anymore. And it shocked me myself in my journey to realize you can actually lose physical hunger too.
Lose physical hunger, and then what about emotional hunger?
Well, that naturally goes. Everyone has many different realities, and that's the joy of free will, and that's the joy of being an intelligent species. We can create any model of reality we want. But the question is, at the end of the day, does the model of reality we create and perpetuate, does it fill our hearts with gratitude? Does it fill our lives with love? Does it fill our lives with grace? And does it perpetuate separation? Or does it allow for the unification of maybe paradigms like one people living in harmony on one planet? And I'm interested in that.
Yes.
You know, I call it a game sometimes, and people say, Jasmine, life's serious, it's not a game. And it's like, it is really a play. You know, we're free will beings, and we can play in many, many different ways, and we can create with love, we can create with awareness, we can create with wisdom, or we can play the me, me, me game and be very selfish in our creation as we struggle to survive. And because we're emotionally hungry and mentally hungry, we get greedy. You know, like take, this is mine, my money, my assets, you know, my perfect house or car or wife or children, or it's the me, me, me game of accumulation and consumerism.
Otherwise we feel we have nothing?
People do, because, you know, it's really funny. I've watched this for years because, like many, we're the witnesses of creation as well as co-creators. And I remember people saying, you know, there's a movie star who always wanted everything and got everything, just wanted to be famous and have the mansion and the perfect everything. And they got all that and then went into loneliness because there was like an inner voice going, psst, there's more.
There's
Psst,
more.
there's more. And that psst, there's more, it's the divine birthright that we have as human beings to know who we really are. And it doesn't matter how much we accumulate or consume, we'll always get to a point where this little voice will go, psst, there's more, because there's something that we call the richness of heart. you know, real richness of heart. And this is the richness we gain through the living of life, through the struggle, the sorrow, the suffering, the joy, the questioning, the begging, the praying, you know, the sometimes engaging in behaviors that we look back on later and we go, oh, I didn't handle that too well. I can do better next time. And all of this gives us experiences and virtues and wisdom, and then we become richer and richer in our heart. And that sort of experience is worth gazillions. There's no such word as gazillions, but you know, millions of dollars. Yes. You know, and people don't realize the value of heart richness sometimes.
Today in your conference, 800 people, I think, and one of them asked to ask a question, but in fact it was not a question, it was a story. Mm-hmm. And the people in the conference hall hardly listening to her story, but you was there listening to her, very attentive. And I was thinking, this is the change, in life change. So if a person with a broken heart, with traumatic past, come to you, so those kind of history are frequently, unfortunately, and they're fighting with themselves. Yeah. So, what when you deal with those kind of energy, what you are doing, in fact, and is it hard? It is a key technique to deal with the negative emotions.
Yeah, you know, there's a movement in America, and they're discussing now on California, on the West Coast, what is a truly spiritual being. And there are many people in the world, and they've studied all the scriptures, they've been to all the wonderful gatherings, they know everything here, but they're not really living it yet. They're not the living example of the purest teachings. And the discussion now is that the sign of a truly aware being is someone who's kind, compassionate.
Doesn't matter what?
Doesn't matter. See, when you're anchored in the truth of who you really are, you can't be moved from that. When your experience of your divine nature is so deep, you're never shaken from that. And the more you align with that purity we all have, we're all being breathed by something so magnificent. We're all being loved by something so magnificent. We're all like little cells just pulsating in this infinite ocean of love and wisdom and power. And when you understand this whole thing is just one little insignificant cell in a huge divine body, and that's your truth, that you're not a human being trying to be spiritual. When you're really in that deep experience, you can't be moved from that. And it doesn't matter the chaos around you, and it doesn't matter anything that's happening around you, because you see from a different perspective. You can't help but feel kindness. You can't help but feel love. You can't help but feel compassion. You can't help but feel this pure, pure peace. And I think the greatest thing that many people need is just kindness, compassion, the ability to listen. And if they need to take an hour to tell their story, and you can sense intuitively that it's important, that maybe somebody hasn't listened to them for a long, long time, or maybe just touch them, you know, or hold their hand while they share, and you seem to know the right way to deal with it and the right words, and maybe they'll share for a little and you'll feel intuitively to add something else, and they'll go, oh, and they'll see it from a different perspective, and something will shift a little within them. Because for me, I just have a program of intention that every being I meet, I connect divine self to divine self, so that we go beyond the mind, beyond the ego, beyond the stories, beyond everything else, and just can share in a way that's for the highest good of all. And there are times to really listen and be a sympathetic ear. And there are times to be, come on, you're being a bit indulgent, maybe. And maybe it would be good to look at it from a different perspective. You know, a lot of people see life from a position of being the victim, instead of understanding that everything is a co-creation from which we learn and grow.
Co-creation, yes. We are not stuck in our programs, in our families' programs.
See, everything, when people feel heard, when they feel loved, they'll relax and then they'll open to new fields of possibility. But you can't just say, oh, you should meditate and you should blah, blah, and not listen. You have to, I think, be tender with people at times and allow them to be heard. And when they're heard and acknowledged, to then maybe offer other pathways or other perspectives. I often say to our audience when we gather all around the world, how many of you here have suffered? Everybody puts their hands up. Me too. And then how many of you have learned from your suffering? And everybody goes, oh. And it's tough sometimes, but then we ask, and how many of you have gained virtues from the suffering? More patience, more tolerance, more understanding. And we've come to a critical point in evolution where the words aren't that important anymore because everyone's heard them all. What's really important is a kind and compassionate heart and the ability to listen to each other and intuitively sense each other's needs.
Yes, so the heart of existence, in fact, is being kind.
I think so.
Yes.
I think when you look at all the teachings through all the world of all the beautiful spiritual beings and messengers who've walked the world and the earth, it comes back to kindness. Kindness to ourselves, kindness to each other. Jesus said, you know, treat your neighbors as you would like to be treated, and many other wonderful things. And Buddha talked of the same, and we need to be compassionate and loving, and the Dalai Lama talks of this and many others.
Kindness with ourselves. But
That's
if
important.
I feel, for example, being annoyed or being angry, so to love even those kinds of feelings and emotions.
It's true, you know. This is a common message coming through too. Love all parts of yourself.
Yes.
If you're angry, you're angry. You can love that part of you that's angry, because whether a part of you is angry or in fear or whatever, that part of you just needs more love. You know, it's like a little child. I'm a mother. I have children and grandchildren and all of that, and they're delightful. And it's so nice to have this mother's consistency of just loving the children as they grow. It's like, you're feeling angry. I can feel that. It's like, yeah, what do you need from me? Nothing. I'm angry. That can be a child. And it's the same within ourselves. We can almost separate the humanness from the divinity we carry, and from the divinity we are to step back into that and just allow and love, but not give all of that too much attention. You know, you can give it attention, but not to the degree where your life is in a cycle of victimness and suffering. And all of that stops anyway when you take the time to live the sort of lifestyle we talk about, so that you can know through experience that magnificence that gives us life.
I just might stop it there. It's a little longer, but you know, I got into the meat of what some of the things that she says that actually relates a lot to what Shima was saying, and KJ and Dave and everyone here actually. You see, so any comments, anything you'd like to add?
I actually took some notes, like there were like some really great stuff. I think the last thing that she mentioned about connecting divine self to a divine self. And it's one reason that you want to be compassionate is just through understanding it's like one united body, that we, the oneness, the unity, that we are all one, and just really understand that like that person who is like, whom you might not know, but that's also still part of you. It's like our relation to a one united body is our relation of ourself to us. It's like our hand is like very like a different place from this hand or from my ear, but what they're doing in unity to each other, they make me, right? So they do different things and they're different parts of my body. But so that's how we as human beings, we relate, we like our relation to each other. It's like we are might be from different parts of the world, but we are still very much connected. And that's why we need that compassion, because we are going to one purpose and we are part of one thing. And I think the other thing that she mentioned was just, again, this divine self, that we are all manifestations of God at divinity. And that's why because we have no idea what God is, even like saying the word God is not right, because we just can't put that in a word. And it's just saying it is just so that I can have a conversation here, just like so that we know what we're talking about. And so it's something that we have no idea about, no understanding. So whoever says that I love God, I know God, it's just, they probably have no idea what that is.
Yeah.
And it's just what we know, it's the manifestations, it's us, it's animals, it's nature. So these are just like the creation, right? The whole creation. And if I really want to show any praise to God, I would just like she said, serving like other people, or just the whole ecosystem or the nature, right? So just as manifestation, because that's something I can see and I can relate to. But God, it's something I don't know, right?
Well, and that's even like she talked about, we all like different people and understand people in the breath, and the breath is not necessarily just meditation, but it's just connecting with our own self and divinity, because we have the divinity in us, like just going with our divine flame and pulling it up from our root energy, you know, as energy points, if you think it in energetics, you know, versus, you know, that name that we go up and connect with it all. I mean, and that goes back to consciousness, vast, and you know, that in the boat scenario, or maybe we're just all in it. And I mean, I've talked about this when I've been there before, and I take that time to connect. That, like, I agree with that analogy in the water. And I feel like it's just that jellyfish and that gel, and like it's just so colorful and powerful, and it's just like looking at other thing, like, you know, when you have oil on a rain puddle and then everything's just streaming with the colors and we're all just connected, which goes back to we've talked about before, your power of thought and your connectedness with people in your life. Like, I've had it with my daughter. Sometimes I'll be sitting downstairs, she's like, Mom, did you call me? I said, well, I was thinking about you in my head. No, you weren't. And she's 14. She gets irritated. But then my girlfriend that's in North Dakota, from where I'm from, and I'm here, all of a sudden I'll be thinking about her and she'll call me on the phone. You know, we have everything, you know, connected.
Yeah. And yet everybody thinks they're separate, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
It's
that's
again,
really-
it's like that cells, like there is what you call I think there's a liquid that differentiate all the cells. So that's why how all the cells are different, right? But that's they also they make my body. So it's like we are different, and we think we're so separate, but we're not.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, she kind of brought up that whole thing, right? That we are this particle in the big ocean of things, which you were talking about earlier, right? And I thought, well, that's, you know, interesting. All these atoms. KJ?
Oh, she's
Yeah.
got, oh, there she.
The one thing that just really like struck me and stood out to me, and that I just really was honey for my heart, was when we know ourselves, that we are the purpose to our life kind of goes more towards service. And yeah, I just love that so much. That's all I
Yeah, I'd like to express how, if we've had that direct experience, that we actually really feel that everybody is, we're all one, So as you look around yourself and you experience other people and things, and you experience them as yourself or as you are all one, how could you react to it other than to be of service or to be kind or to want to help yourself? You know, it's not really selfishness, but it's, you know, it's just, if you really have that experience, how could you treat anything or anybody any differently than with kindness and love?
And it's all about that experience, because it has to come, like, it doesn't matter how many times somebody tells me, until I really understand that, like, in my heart, I can do it, right? And one thing I actually want to mention, that was like years ago, and full disclosure, I was on mushroom and I had this trip.
A lot from that.
No, because it is very much connected, because she thought about shifting priorities, right?
Mhm.
And I was a very selfish being at the time, but I wanted to know, I wanted just to know more. So I don't know if any of you have experience, but I don't do any of that stuff anymore, because we need that just direct connection. But I used to. And in like that trip, it was very interesting, because I could really, it was like I was really getting connected to, like, I was like, I don't know, some person in Africa that I was really could feel their pain and their sorrow and like the poverty and what they go through. And it was just like they're very dear, like they're my loved ones. It's like they're I like someone I really know, or maybe they're just, it was just so close. Maybe it was just me, but I could have that. And at the same time, I really hated myself to be so selfish and to care about things that I used to care about. And then like what other human beings are going through like at the moment, and what my thoughts are in terms of being just like consumers and just like having more things. So that's just to the point that Dave said, just like you need to have that experience yourself in order to be like, oh yes, like yes, we are all one. And so it for me was like, it was that experience that I really truly, it was just very close. Like I couldn't ignore it. It was just so real.
Yeah, that's amazing. You know, it's also, I think about when she says in the video, don't be hard on yourself, right? Like send love to that part of you, right? The angry you or whatever, right? Because that's what that part of you needs, right? So,
Well,
And-
isn't it, oh, go on.
Go ahead, Casey.
Isn't it kind of like we have the power within us to even heal ourselves? I mean, the energetic stuff. And I even think of Louise Hay, and you go back to Wade Dyer and Hay House. I mean, like you speak it, you say it, your body wants to hear your voice, and that's vibration. And then as those are happening, you have the thoughts and positive affirmations, and all of a sudden, like people heal from so much trauma, even physical, that you don't even know, so.
Mhm.
Yeah, and like, all the information that a cell need to repair itself, it's inside that cell. And that's what like the medicine also goes where like they can build like a complete organ from one cell, because all the information is within there and it just needs to be like to get activated. And that's like another thing. I don't know if you read about that, like the whole page that you sent, the Wikipedia of Muhammad Ali Tari, because one of the things is also about the treatment. It's like the alternative treatment with consciousness, that actually you can get connected, and through this connection, this information within ourselves to repair it gets activated, and that's how we heal or we see the treatment happens. So that's just another just point to what you
Yeah.
said.
Yeah, I think, it's important to know this information, to share it as well, right? Because so many people out there give their power away, right, to something outside of themselves. And it really is connecting to a greater understanding what you are. And there's nothing wrong with connecting with other like-minded people, because they can actually help in the healing process as well in other ways. But it's the pharmaceutical companies that are problem and all these other things, right? So,
And I think it still goes back to, like, I think of what I've learned in the past couple years, how I like to be I know I've always been service and kind and loving and a great heart. Not saying I haven't had my moments, we all do, but I'm learning the divine flame, my own divinity, that yes, we can be together in community. What is it? How you were going with, but we have to remember that we need to take care of us first. And it's not being so much selfish, it's just taking that time to know ourselves, like Shima and everyone was saying, to be aware of ourselves so that everything works out together.
Yeah, that's so important, because in our giving, we have limitations, and we might go beyond them, and we end up depleting ourselves on every level. And you just have to be careful of that, and definitely keep your ship together.
and Kelly, do you have anything you'd like to say?
No, not
Okay.
really.
And you've followed Jasmine for a while.
Yes,
and her
yes,
stuff.
I
And
do.
yeah, and she truly is remarkable as well. And these spiritual teachers, it's important, to find someone you connect with, and you can learn from.
Yep.
Is she
You know,
from
it's nice to-
was she from Canada, or I
She's
hadn't
from
heard her?
Australia.
Australia.
And I just wanted to go back to KJ was asking, about love, and what is that greater love and that. And I know when in the book, my Robert Monroe books, a friend of Dave's has them right now, but in one of his books, and Robert Monroe started the Monroe Institute, and he would and he started them because he had out of body experiences, right? And so he started journaling those experiences. And he was older when he had them, like in his 40s, and he was a businessman and all this, and he didn't know who to share it with, but eventually he did come out and share it with all his professional friends and that sort of stuff. But there's one point where being takes him close to source or God, or if you want to call it that. And he talked about this overwhelming feeling of just pure light, pure love. He said it's beyond words. You can't really express it. And he said it was so overwhelming, they could only take me so close to it, right? They couldn't take him too close to it because it was just too much for him to, it would be too overwhelming for him. So it's, it's something to think about, right? Because we are in this material world, and a lot of us are programmed to think, oh, there's romantic love and their soulmates and blah blah blah, and we get caught into that when there's actually a greater love, right? That we are all from.
Yeah, and you have to have the capacity to be blessed with that love, and just love itself, it's not something that you can just go and find or just say, oh, I want to get this being loved tomorrow. It's just, you have to be blessed with that love, whether it's loving someone else or just like just the higher being. Yes, the whole thing, like the whole creation is love, and the whole like mysticism is also based on love, and that's how we divide we divide it into a step of logic and step of love. And we when you are on the step of logic, obviously that's when we have this conversation, and we just try to just bring reasonings and logics, and just maybe just to explain things. But when we go on the step of love, it's just experiencing it. There's nothing that can be said. For example, if I was never in love, doesn't matter how much you're trying to tell me how it's like, I can never really understand it, right? There's like no word that you can put so that I can understand what it's like to be loved. And that's, the connection is like that too. It's like, when you get connected, then you understand what the connection is. It just doesn't matter how someone else tell you, okay, so this is what connection is. It's just because it happens in the world of love, where there's like really no word can explain it truly.
Yeah. Any other comments that people have? KJ, is there anything you'd like to add?
I've had a few thoughts, but they're all escaping me at this moment.
Okay. What I'd like to do now before we go is share 2 stories. And like I said, they relate to Kelly. And I really wanted to focus on them because, you know, another thing we seem to be programmed to believe, you know, when you watch television, movies, and all this sort of stuff, is that mankind or humanity is evil, right? It's bad. And, you know, you hear more bad than you do good. And maybe the newscast might give you one little happy story out of all the stuff they've been bombarding you with, right? Mm. And so one thing that I do want to get more into in the future is looking at humanity at its best. And so these are 2 stories. And the reason I showed that video with Jasmine was she talks about kindness, right? The kindness of others, that sort of thing. And these were 2 situations where I witnessed it. And so in the first story, it's when when Kelly was young and she was learning. And Kelly, by the way, for those of you who do not know, Kelly is totally blind. And so when Kelly was younger in Hamilton, they had HADS, right? This downhill skiing, Kelly, you're learning downhill skiing.
Yes.
Right. And so Kelly invited me to go one evening to watch her ski down the hill. And so, yeah, I'm watching her, and she had like a rope between her and their guide, and he's telling her go left, right, you know, that sort of thing. And she's going down. It was great, you know, to watch. Amazing. And you won't ever find me doing downhill skiing. But anyway, so I was impressed with Kelly doing it. But, you know, when Kelly went down the hill, that's fine. And then, and HADS is what's it?
Association of Disabled Skiers, but they're gone now.
So they had people with different disabilities, children with different disabilities. So the next person to go down the hill was a young, I'd say he was maybe 10 years old or so, a little boy, and he has cerebral palsy, and they had him on a bench or a chair first, but then they had a special device, a special ski for him to ride on. It was a chair. And there were 2 or 3 volunteers, I would say about 3 of them, young guys. And they go, come on, Joey, come on, Joey. And they get him and they put him on. And he was ecstatic. He was so happy that the whole place kind of radiated with his happiness. And I can remember feeling it in my heart and it just coming up through my eyes. I had to turn away. It was so overwhelming, their excitement and their kindness to him, that I couldn't face it, right? I keep thinking of Robert Monroe getting close to swords, right? So that was one story where you really saw people at their best, because that was probably like the highlight of his day, if not his week or his life. Like, it was amazing to watch. Okay. And then the second story was I would say probably 98 or so, Kelly, when we went to Indianapolis with your parents. Do you remember that?
think I do. Yeah, well, I
Yeah.
remember the trip. Yes.
Yeah, we went to the Indianapolis Children's Museum, and that was fine. That was wonderful. But afterwards, we wanted to go to the Indy 500 museum. And so we go there, and there was an older man who was a volunteer in the museum. And when he found out Kelly was blind, he took Kelly by the arm and he took her through that whole museum, and the rest of us did not exist. It was amazing to watch. He takes her behind the rope barriers. He lets her touch the cars, sit in the cars, like people all standing around going, is she ever lucky, right? But again, I felt that feeling of, wow, like this is humanity. This is someone being so kind, right?
Yeah.
And so they were just two stories I want to share with you, because I do think we have to remind ourselves of the kindness of others.
Yes.
And we witness it all the time. And it's a good thing to keep in mind.
Mhm.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Last week or sometime recently, I was just feeling a little empty, and I was on YouTube and I found myself searching random acts of kindness to restore your faith in humanity. And I sat there for a good 45 minutes and just like wept, and it just filled my heart and just like reminded me again of like who we are, and it was just like, oh yes.
Well, and even it's just a ripple effect. Like, just think of what if you do the random act of kindness and do instead of watch. Like, a lot of times you buy that cup of coffee for that people behind you, or you put a sticky note with a good saying on it somewhere on someone's door or mailbox or mirror in your house or friend. I mean, there's, and you know, there's more, like you watch the YouTube, but it's also about doing. And then that ripples back even to you and to everyone else, you know, tenfold.
Yeah, yeah. You know, and
Action.
you know, keep this in mind. Like, if any of you have really interesting videos or interviews, Shima, if you have, you know, talks from your teacher and that, you know, just send them to me, send the links to me, because you know, I do want to start a playlist of putting things like that together.
I will. Okay.
Spiritual teachers and, you know, people at their best, you know, nice little videos like that, because we need more of that out there, right? And sharing that sort of thing.
I know, it's just sometimes you're just so depleted and there's just need something, right?
Yeah, and music, really good music too.
Yes.
You think of, yeah.
Beauty, love, truth.
Yeah, anything like that, because it, you know, that's a part of expanding consciousness, right? And reminding us that we are, you know, special beings.
That we are more than machines, because that's also like I guess we have the choice to go to two paths, and I guess what's like industrial world wants us to go is like through that we are like robots, right? So just like get up in the morning, go to work like 8 to 5, come back, I don't know, do chores,
Right.
go to sleep. It's just like, it's just so robotic, right?
Yeah.
Whereas as humans, we're talking about the nature of us is love and compassion and just experiencing life. And sometimes we are just so estranged with that side, and or some people at least. So yeah.
Yes. Better
And
go out and be with people.
yeah. Well, Dave, you know, I mean, Dave, you are remarkable. You know, I've known Dave to, you know, phone his buddies, and you can tell the guy's been sitting at home by himself and, you know, just drinking. And the minute he hears Dave's voice, he, you know, really cheers up. And you do that a lot with your buddies, your friends. Yeah.
Just stay connected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's really important too. And
Yeah, it's interesting, like with the, like you mentioned 9-to-5 jobs, and someone mentioned selfishness earlier, and it's like, what are we really doing with all of these, like what's our intention with those things? It's we're trying to get the car or like the nice things which we think are going to fill this void, and what we're actually seeking is that feeling of connection and love, though.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's true, KJ, because if you remember what Jasmine says, people have all types of hunger, mental hunger, emotional hunger, physical hunger, spiritual hunger, right? It's all that stuff. And you know, she says, once you really get into your practice and you really understand who you are, you're more anchored, and a lot of those hungers disappear.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's mostly about that mental hunger and spiritual hunger, because I feel like the problem of us, of people, is that not having enough awareness and just not knowing either ourselves or the universe or what this world's about. And that's how like people with power get to rule us or to govern us and just to do what they want to do, because there are other people who are accepting it, right? So just not knowing and not being aware, I think that's where the problem is, because we do have food.
Yeah.
It's like that the distribution, it's not right? So we have like too much at some parts and we have none at other parts. I feel like once that void, like hunger, mental hunger or the spiritual hunger, that gets solved, the other things will also we will not be there anymore. The hunger, the physical hunger will go away.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other comments?
No.
Wow, this is a great show. And thank you, KJ, for joining us. I hope you
My pleasure.
got
Thank
something
you
from-
so much, all of you.
Yeah, and please
Thank
join
you.
us again. We meet every Wednesday. And are you in Vancouver?
I'm in
KJ?
Victoria.
Yeah, yeah. So, you know, we meet at 7 p.m., as you know. And yeah, so, and like I said, if you have any videos that you'd like to share that have really inspired you, any information on spiritual teachers, and also uplifting music. In fact, I may put a link to one that I listen to often. He's a Brazilian singer, and he takes Gregorian chants and puts a bit of a change to them, but they're just beautiful. And so I could maybe send one now that's a link in Meetup and then emails.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Please send that. Is there also, I've been, because I love classical music. I really love it.
Yeah.
And I've been looking for classical music at like a, a higher frequency, because I find that classical music in general is really, really great. But I have heard that there are certain pieces that are higher frequency. So I've been trying to find them, and I'm sure I have. I just, yeah.
Well, Kelly, that's something you and I can investigate, see if we can find
Well,
something. that
And
we
I'm
can-
assuming you've gone to YouTube, because I was
Yes.
funny as you said that. I was thinking frequency, and then you just brought it up. But you look for the different megahertz of frequencies. You know, you get like the angelic 111, but then 428 or 528. You can search for frequencies and get
Yeah.
those different, vibration music that you can just even play in your home about love and angelic, or which is more earthly plane versus the vastly plane, or cleansing your house with the different vibrations they have.
Yeah, I've been trying to increase my frequency level again, because it's been a little lower lately, but that's okay. It's not super low, but and so
Well, we're in winter hibernation.
oh
Yeah, that's true. Keep that in mind. Yeah, we all get like that.
It's
Ah,
soon the return of the light. So
I think it's also the end of the year too. I always find that in December, I just get really tired and I don't, I just get burned out by December.
Well, rest, yeah, it's
Yeah,
like,
rest,
like you
sure.
say, like Casey said, we're in hibernation mode and we need to rest, so get lots of rest. We got lots of darkness, it's not so much daylight, so
Yeah, yeah. And,
it's a natural cycle.
yeah, and this has been a year of a lot of changes for people, right? So,
Yeah,
I
it
think
has been.
also it too, right? So, I'm going with it right now. I'm going with it, but I'm also
well,
like, I'm gonna change it too.
So I just want to also add that the full video of that interview with Jasmine Heen and some of her links in that I'll put, on the YouTube channel too. And I've been adding Lady Colleen Heller's information in there too. So I
Good.
want to continue with that. So, and I'd like to thank everyone for joining us tonight. It was a great discussion. I really
thanks Diane and Kelly and
Actually,
KJ,
can
Sheena.
can I say something?
Sure,
course.
yeah, Shima.
Just before we go, because Casey mentioned cleansing, and one of the links that we have is calling for cleansing of a space, whether it's your house or it's public places, basically cleansing from the negative vibrations that can be around us. And so I do that obviously for my house, or just like you can do it for the public spaces. But I was wondering if you guys would like, I can call, but I have to obviously ask for permission, but I can do, I can call for that too if you want. For
I think
the,
that'd be great.
yeah.
Yes. Yay.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. But just I have to tell you that for a short period of time, you might like when I first called it for my house, I saw increased amount of mice in our place. So you might see like pests or just like maybe I don't know where you live. Different, but you might see increase of that for a short amount for a couple of days or so, but then they will all go away. So just I have to say that too.
Great.
No, explain that again. Why though? Why does it happen?
It's just like it's what we called it's hard to translate. We called externalization. I know that's like a bad translation, but basically when and that happens in our body too, when basically we get connected. First of all our diseases, all our fears might come to the surface. All of a sudden you might have nightmares you didn't have before. You might have like, you just feel like, oh, you have all this phobia you didn't have. So everything that is like deep in there, it might just come to the surface. And that happens to the species too, where it's just, I don't know why it is that way, but that's how it is, that you might just like might see more cockroaches all of a sudden. It's just like, because you're cleansing, it's a reaction of that negative vibration. It's like kind of a reaction. So
Bring
it's
it to light. Bring it.
yeah, exactly. Yes, yes. I think
You're moving it. Is what's happening is you're moving it and it's going out.
Yes, so it's like coming to surface and then it will get rid of it.
Yeah.
So yeah. So yeah, I would call for all of you if you want.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
KJ, is that okay with you?
Sure, sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Okay.
Wonderful.
Thank you again. Good night, everyone.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank
Casey.
you. Bye. Bye.
Bye.